Welcome to I Change the Narrative, a podcast centered around Black men, inspiring, supporting, and empowering Black men and Black boys. This episode of I Change the Narrative is sponsored by So Organic, So Suave, also known as Sauce. Sauce is a luxury hair care and skincare refuge for those with thick hair and melanin-rich skin. From healthy beard growth to top of head hair styling to an illuminating skincare regimen, Sauce Essentials will naturally enhance your outer appearance to strengthen your inner confidence. Sauce invites you to accept the authenticity in real self-care and embrace your best. You can find Sauce's award-winning grooming essentials online at sossd.co. Again, that's sossd.co. You can also follow Sauce on Instagram and for the latest in product in news and updates at sossd.co. Elevate your grooming with Sauce today. Today's topic, we are talking about self-confidence, the Black man and his self-confidence. Before we start out the conversation, I want to ask our guest to tell us about himself, where he's from, and the work that he is involved in that lends itself to the topic and the lived experience.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is David Smith, and I'm based here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I've been doing the work of executive coaching, life coaching, almost 20 years now. I've been working in particular in spaces with men, particularly Black men. 1993, 94, I started working with men, small sales groups with men. That has expanded, of course, into coaching and also the work that I do here in Atlanta. Two parts that really excite me about working with men is one is I spend a lot of time with Men Stopping Violence here in Atlanta. That is a space that is a product out of the court system that is a diversion program to keep Black men out of prison, and especially through the lenses of domestic violence. And so this is a program that diverts them from prison, gives them the tools to have emotional intelligence, to have healthy relationships so they can get back on track, be back in their homes if that is the case, and have the positive relationships with their children without being centrally involved in the courts. I'm very passionate about the less time that Black men have in front of the judge, the better we are. Secondly, the space I'm also working with out of LA is a spiritual life group, and they brought me in. I've been working with them now almost 2 years, consistently every month, and we talk about all issues concerning men, family, finances, emotions, the political space that we find ourselves in, how to take better care of our health, anything that Black men actually deal with. But in the it's quote unquote barbershop talk, we deal with it in our group on Saturday out of Los Angeles. And lastly, I want to say, as a Black man, I do not want to do this work in spaces that I don't see us represented. So for me, it's critically important that I have my foot in spaces that I know that I feel comfortable in. I know the language and the culture, as I also go into other cultures and work across the board. So that's why I'm excited about being here. I really appreciate you inviting me. Janerka?
Gernika.
Janika, I'm gonna get it right. The struggle was real for a minute, but I'm here. I'm in the ballpark.
I love it.
So it's always a pleasure to sit and talk with Black women about Black men and the things that we're doing. Actually, the things we're actually thinking about and care about the most.
Yes, thank you so much, David, for being here. You just made my heart smile.
I'm glad.
Yes.
Yes. And we're not into breaking hearts. We want those
No,
hearts
no.
smiling on today. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So there's nothing like a Black man who exudes self-confidence. He does not have to announce himself. You recognize his self-confidence because of how he moves and what he speaks. However, there is a fine line between confidence and arrogance. But smart, confident Black men know the difference. He knows that his value, what his value is, his self-value is, and he moves accordingly. So let's get into the conversation. David, tell us, what is self-confidence and why is it important?
Well, confidence sits on two axles. We think about maybe two legs of a chair. And one area is history and experience.
Mm,
The other leg is knowing who you are. Those are the anchors of self confidence. And the spaces around knowing who you are, let's start there first. That comes through your cultural experiences, that comes through your value system, that comes through the stories that you've been told and what you actually identify with. Those values are anchored, meaning they're unwavering many times, they are non negotiable. So when a person walks in and they know who they are and they know their capabilities, they know their skills, they are aware of their blind spots. They are aware of their weaknesses. They're aware of their strengths, and they make others better around them. That person is absolutely a joy to work with, a joy to be around, a joy to be in conversation with. So that's knowing who you are. It's not surface. Those people who walk into a space and own the space is not driven by ego. It's driven by I'm here. I know who I am. I know what I bring, and I also know what I don't know.
mm,
And that too is critical when we think about self confidence. And the second arm is the experience and the history.
mhm,
We speak from experience, knowledge base, expertise, subject matter expertise, and also just life experiences from whether it is through regionally where you grow up, right? So you
mhm,
meet a person from New Orleans, they have a history that's richly embedded in that experience of being in Louisiana, in particular in New Orleans. So experience and also the history. If you've been on this planet as long as we have been, you have some experience. You have a history here that's rooted in the things you've done well, the mistakes that you've made,
mhm,
the things that you actually celebrate, the things that are negotiable, the things that are non-negotiable. All of those things come from a rich history of a history there, and also through that experience. So you get a deep-rooted experience with history and a person who knows who they are. That you can those two things married together brings about a self-confidence
mm,
that's unwavering.
mm.
That's my definition of self-confidence.
Awesome. You said something that stuck out to me. What does it mean to know what your blind spots are?
That's a great point. Well, oftentimes, if we're doing any self reflection and self assessment, we don't do it alone. We do it in community with other people.
Mm,
And they can, anything that's worthwhile doing, let me say this, anything that is worthwhile doing, it is best to do it in community with other people.
mm,
And people can see what we can't see.
right.
So when we think about blind spots, that means we're able to receive from other people their experiences with us, and we take that experience and their assessment of us, and
Mm,
we realize, wait a minute, I wasn't aware of that.
mm,
For instance, I wasn't aware that if someone is speaking, that I may interject and interrupt.
mm,
You may not be aware of that because you may not be cued in that particular way. But someone who's in relationship with you, in community with you, they can say, hey, Roger, when you speak, oftentimes when we're in conversation, I can't finish my thought.
mm.
That's a blind spot.
Oh,
See? And so if the person is open to being in community now, understand blind spots are not siloed. You only find out and have the experience of having those excavated in relationship with other people, whether
mm,
that's on the professional side. They call it feedback on the
right,
professional side.
right.
Those are blind spots. They're going to say, hey, you're doing these things well, but here's some other areas that I believe that areas of opportunity for you. On the personal side, you just don't know how others experience you. And so you get some real time feedback from people that actually care about you, that you actually care about as well. And so those are blind spots. And people that you just things that you're just not aware of. The only way you can discover those things is in community with other people.
Mm.
And so that's why the blind spots are so important. And blind spots are not necessarily weaknesses.
Oh, good.
They
Good.
get a blind spot.
Right.
Right. And I said, oh, I wasn't aware that when I speak to you that you don't have opportunity to finish your thought.
Mm.
My my intention is to make sure that you're heard.
Wow.
And that's it.
I like that. It's not a weakness.
It's not a weakness. No, because here's why it's not a weakness. Because if you're working from ego, you'll see it through the lens of a weakness.
Mm. Say it again.
If you're working through the ego, you're going to see it through the lens of a weakness.
Mm.
But if you're working through self-confidence, you
Hmm.
see it as a bonus.
Yeah.
You see it as a gift.
Mm.
Because the more you know about yourself, the better you are in the world that you occupy.
So it's all about perspective and how
Absolutely.
we perceive it.
Absolutely. It is about it's not the seed is not the problem, it's the ground.
Mm.
And so many times the seed that's been planted cannot take root in us because we haven't done the work. The ground hasn't been tilled. We're not in touch with ourselves in ways that allow that seed to take root. I mean, people got to come in and nurture that. People got to come in and pour water on that. You got to wrestle with that. You have to tend to that. You got to give it time to grow. And you're going to give yourself permission to make mistakes. The
Mm.
ego does not allow that. A ego pushed back against that. But a
Right.
man who is self-confident, who is well aware of their weaknesses and their blind spots, they and knowing that they do it in community with other people, they understand the importance of the seed that's just been planted, and that seed is change, growth,
Got it. Got
movement.
it. Mm.
Right? That's where the self confidence and the blind spots. And that we're not looking. Let me say this around blind spots.
Got
We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for growth.
it. Mhm. So if we're not, why do you suppose the culture, the world,
Mhm.
always stresses perfection? Where does it all come from? How can we get rid of that? Because I think it's a barrier
Mm.
instead of helping us to move forward.
That's a great question around perfection. I think perfection is an enemy to us
Hmm.
because it demands of us to devour and denounce
Mm.
our humanity and and our citizenship on this planet. So if we talk about, well, yeah, I think we have to look at through that particular lens.
Mhm.
That our value place on this planet is not to be perfect, but to be human.
Mm.
You see,
Right.
so if we're operating in our humanity,
Hmm.
not our gender,
Right.
right, not our class, not our education background, not our regional location, but if we're operating through our humanity, then we know there's no way we can ever be perfect. We're always going to be growing, moving, excavating, exploring, discovering.
Mm.
So when we have our blind spots, we're actually discovering what needs to be discovered. Perfection doesn't allow you to discover. It doesn't allow you to pull the pieces together and then make sense of it all. So
Mm.
that's why it is the enemy to us. It takes away our humanity.
David, you're saying a whole bunch of great nuggets right now. It's
Mm,
just, thank you so much. Thank you. I thank you.
thank you.
Because it's this, I believe that what you're saying is going to help us to rethink and recalibrate and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
So I thank you. This was the show that I wanted to have at the end of the year, so that we can go into the new year with some great things to think about. So thank you so much for the things that you're saying. It's a blessing.
Thank you.
It's not always easy to be confident in yourself, particularly if you're naturally self critical or if you've dealt with people putting you down at various points in life. So, for the Black man who has a poor perception of himself, where does he begin to build a sense of confidence and dignity to help strengthen and build his resiliency?
Great question. I believe that we have to separate what is factual and what is truth.
Mhm.
Those are two different words.
Yeah.
So certain things are factual. Maybe
Mhm.
you grew up a certain way. Maybe you were exposed to certain things. Maybe you heard certain messages. Maybe you didn't get the right score and didn't get into that school. Maybe you didn't perform for the interviewer and you didn't get the job. Those are facts. So
Mhm.
we have, and so I tell gentlemen I'm working with, let's separate the facts from the truth because the truth allows us to have a counter narrative.
Mm.
We identified the facts. All the things I just listed, I'm sure there are tons. These are facts. But here's my truth. I may have grown up this particular way, and you may have said these things about me, but my truth is that I'm clear, I'm honest, I'm decent, I'm caring. That's your truth. So, how do we do that? We always need to have a counter narrative of truth. We're not ignoring the facts, but facts are not truth.
Mhm.
So, I tell men, write down on a sheet of paper all the things you've been told. And they could be factual. Could be some things that you just how you are. Okay, fine. Write all those things down on one side of the paper. And then on the other side of the paper, counter that with some truth.
Mhm.
Each particular thing that you believe that you've been told or you experience, counter that with your truth of today.
Mhm.
And that is where you begin to really build a different kind of narrative and move through life in a very powerful way.
Mm.
So I want to sum it up to say, do that work, do that practice of separating what is facts, what are the facts here, and what actually is my truth. And from there, you can go in any direction and move in any circle and be a citizen on this planet in very powerful ways. There is a clear difference between what is factual and what is actually our truth.
Yeah. Now, is that the same thing as implementing new mental habits?
Absolutely, it is. It is. What's the book that's out there? Atomic Habits now, right?
Mhm.
Our habits come from a value system. So I want to put this formula out there for men as well, who's listening, who's going to be listening to this podcast. Not only do I ask you to do the facts truth column work on the paper, but I'm
Right.
also saying to you that when we do that facts and the truth piece, right, then we're also building a new narrative. We are telling a new story,
Yes.
right? And so we want to look at value system. So it's beliefs, values, and behavior.
Right.
My good friend Denise Williams out of LA, who's a psychotherapist, um, she gave me this formula many years ago. Whenever I would get stuck on something, she said, "Well, let's do the work," and I was like, "I don't want to do no work."
Yeah.
I don't wanna, right? Yeah, those I don't wanna moments, right? But she said, so let's look at your values. Your values are those things that are embedded in you. So, for instance, let's look at you value health and wellness. That's a value.
Yes.
Your belief is what? That it gives me longevity. I'm able to play with my kids. I'm able to go on vacations. It gives me mobility, better rest, right? That's a belief.
Right.
Well, the practice of that is exercise, water, rest, good diet, laughter, play, passion, right? So when I talk about when we talk about faith, facts, and truth, the counter narrative is through your value system,
Mhm.
your, your beliefs, your values, and behaviors.
Yeah.
Is a key component to moving the needle forward to a counter narrative. So it isn't heady. It isn't just in our head intellectually. It
Right.
is a soul deep heart issue. It says, what do I actually value? Why do I value it? And then what is the behavior that I need to display
Mm.
that says this is what I value? Show me what you do, and I'll show you what you value.
Yes. Yes. So while we're talking about building,
Mhm.
What is imposter syndrome?
Oh,
And,
this is a good one. Go
and
ahead.
how do we navigate as we're rebuilding our minds?
Well, that's great. Well, I tell you, in the work that I do as executive coach, and especially working with black professionals and also people of color, do you not know that comes up on a weekly basis? These are
Really?
yes, yes. These are people who are vice presidents. We're talking senior vice presidents. We're talking chief financial officers. We're talking high level individuals who have many people reporting into them,
Wow.
and they are dealing with imposter syndrome, male and female.
Mm.
Now, it's not just a gender thing. More women than men, but
Right,
definitely we see that it's steered more toward women in that
right,
particular way.
right.
And so when we look at the word imposter and the word syndrome, let's break that down for a second. So I asked them, when you say you're dealing with imposter syndrome, I said, well, are you a fraud?
Mm,
Are you fake?
mhm.
Are you not real? Are you a trickster? Because that's what an imposter is,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And they're
Mm,
like, no, I'm not that.
right.
Okay, so it's a holy space. So we're not that, right? No, no, no. Okay, so syndrome is about it's a diagnosis.
Mhm.
Is a sickness. Something is off,
Right.
right? Right? Something needs to be tended to. There's something around the element of health and sickness that's around the syndrome.
Mm,
So, are you? Have you been diagnosed? So we look at imposter and a syndrome, and I break it down like that. They said, "Wait a minute here. I'm none of those things." Bingo.
ah,
So then, what is it? Because many times the environment that we're in drives the imposter syndrome. What's in the environment? What do you see and what do you experience on any given day that undermines your confidence? That you holding a master's degree from Yale University,
mhm.
you holding a graduate degree from Emory University, you are third generation PhD in your family, and you walk around with imposter syndrome. So the question becomes: it's environmental.
Mhm.
It's microaggressions. It's all the little nuances and little innuendos that we hear and see and experience that chip away, that makes us think that we're not good enough, that make us think that we don't deserve this position, that think that they're going to come and take it from us. They're going to find out I'm just a fake and a fraud and I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, so you believe to tell me that they didn't vet you, but you're a senior vice president, and you mean to tell me the company did no vetting on you? They just picked you out and plucked you. They didn't know your history of your work. They didn't know your successes. They didn't interview others around you. Oh no, they did that. So why are you walking around with imposter syndrome?
Mm,
Well, I said, take that off the table and let's look at environmentally how that impacts us, the messaging that we hear, the things that we're not allowed, maybe not have access to. And one of those things, especially in the workplace, when we think about imposter syndrome, is people don't have mentors and they don't have sponsors, and so they're out here by themselves with all this stuff going on, and they don't have a place for themselves to park that feel safe, that they can work these things out with.
right.
So imposter syndrome, I wanted to take the sting away from it, because the person is not fraudulent. The person is not dealing with a syndrome.
Right.
This person is dealing with all the environmental things that's giving them all these subtle messages, and they have not done the work to break down the facts and truth.
Mm,
So they don't have a counter narrative. They take it all in and they begin to second guess and question themselves. So imposter syndrome is not something that I believe that we deal with like something that I have to fix. It's in the culture, it's in the environment, it's in
mm,
the fabric of the walls in our homes, in our occupations as well, that we actually have to think about what's in the environment that causes me to think that I'm not good enough or they're gonna come and get me,
mm.
and that fear has frozen us. and
Yes.
and that is what we want. That's what I try to break through, especially working with clients. So that's what I would say about imposter syndrome. I will ask them those questions, and immediately when I do that, then we can go to a different place around it.
So how do you show them how to navigate around that when they're
Go ahead.
when they're dealing with trying to rebuild their mind or transform their mind?
Yeah, I can say that whatever you, I said, I come back, I said, I go back to, I said, well, when those thoughts of I'm
Mm,
not good enough to be in this space,
right.
they're going to find me out, right? They're going to come and get me, pull me out of this role. And I go back and I said, well, I want you to go back and ask, is that really true?
Mm,
Is that really true? And how do and they say no, that's not really true. So where is that coming from? And oftentimes it's so historical.
yeah.
It's much deeper than I can go to as a coach. But I start there. I said there's a lie that you've been told that somehow or another has become a truth.
Mm,
And we got to tear that up because they're not coming to get you. And they're not going to take it from you unless you're doing something that's unethical or anything like that, or maybe there's a downsize that happens in many occasions. But I bring them right back to their truth. So my goal is to tell them, go back to your office, go back to your den, go back to your man cave, and sit and think, hear what's happening, hear the messages that you're wrestling with, and then go back to your truth and counter that in very powerful ways. It is a simple exercise, but it's very powerful to get to silence that message. And I want to say this last thing: it may not ever go away,
mm.
but
Truth.
it's not magnified as much.
Right.
It doesn't drive you as
Right.
it used to 5 years ago,
Right.
but it may always be there. But you can have a different relationship with it if you know what to do with it.
I like that. That's powerful. Ooh. When you said you asked your clients, is that true? I recall when I was younger, when I was a little girl, and someone would say something, and I would go back to my mother, and she said, "Who said that? Did I say that? Is that the truth? If you didn't hear me say it, then it's not the truth." So that was powerful. Thank you, Mom.
Wherever you are, Mama, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
that was good. That was real good.
Thank you.
So as black men are transforming their minds, it is
Mm,
important for black men to understand, I think, the difference between aggressiveness versus assertiveness.
mm.
Talk to us about that in this as we're talking about self-confidence.
Great. What I hear you saying is that many times we are misunderstood around what is aggressive and what is assertive,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So this comes down to how do we effectively communicate exactly who we are and how we move, right?
Yes.
So many times when people hear aggressive, oftentimes that's coming through tone,
Mhm.
right? People hear tone before they hear a message,
Mhm.
right? So when I'm working with black men, I said, well, you can be assertive, but how is your tone? How is your delivery? Because people can perceive that as aggressive based upon just historically how they see men,
Mhm.
right? Especially black men. And so when I say to them, 90% of communication is tone and 10% is message.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when we think about being assertive, you speak up, you go after what you want, you do not silence yourself, you don't shrink, right? When we think about aggressive, it is more of, it comes from this place of strongholding, taking up space, competitiveness, right? It
Mhm.
can also has a form of violence that's connected to this kind of aggressiveness. But that all drives, if we dilute that down, it comes down to how do we effectively communicate in our lives on a daily basis with the people that we actually care about, that's in
Mhm.
our homes and around us on a daily basis, and also in the professional world. So being assertive is to speak up. Is to own your skills, talents, and capabilities.
Mhm.
Sometimes to be aggressive, it comes from a different place that may be ego driven, that gets us in trouble,
Wow.
right? The ego wants to grab it. The ego wants to snatch. The ego got to have it because it needs to be fed all the time.
Mm.
But when you're assertive, you don't have to be aggressive. You get clear, concise, in control, direct, caring, all those things that go along with people galvanizing around you because you have something to say about who you are. But aggressiveness, oftentimes, when a person is aggressive, they leave collateral damage.
Mm.
You got bodies behind you, people who've been hurt and wounded. because it was all about snatch and grab, and not about how do I relate this in a way that does no harm, that does not isolate, it actually invites in. There's space for everybody at the table, and everybody can eat. And we're going to make this thing do what it needs to do in a very powerful way. That's being assertive. But aggressive, they want all of it. They take up space. There's no space for someone else. And so it's a form of violence if we're not careful.
Mm.
Right? Because we see it in sports. You got to be aggressive in sports. We get it, right?
Right,
But that doesn't work many times. It doesn't translate well in the
right,
professional world and does not translate well in our personal lives. It
right.
actually causes harm if we're not careful. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Help. How do Black men begin to discover their voice and understand their value as Black men?
Mhm.
Is there beginning? Can you do this at 30? Can you do this at 20? Can you do this even at 60, 70?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we can. I think that, first of all, I think we have to understand, first of all, and acknowledge that we're human beings.
Mm,
I don't hear that enough.
mm,
I
really?
don't I don't hear that we're human that I hear we're black men, but I don't hear that we're human beings who just happen to be black.
Mm,
And there's layers to us. It's complicated, right?
mhm.
It's many layers. We're complicated, no doubt. I hear brothers say, "I'm simple." I'm like, please don't tell yourself that you're not. You are complicated. The women in your life are still trying to figure you out. So, it's not as easy. You may have some patterns,
Yes,
but you're complicated, right? And so
right.
in our humanity, we're complicated. And I think in our humanity, we can be flawed, and we can be messy, and we can be beautiful, and we can be complex, and we can be loving, and we can also be not so good. That's
Right.
the full range of our humanity allows us to be the kind of black man that we need to be when we're fully in touch with that, right? And that we want to take away this thing of, well, how do we tap into that? Let's tap into the humanity. Then we can add the cultural component to it. What does it mean to be a black man in the South? What it means to be a black man in the North, in the East, or a black man in Brazil, or a black man in South America, right? Or black, I just left Spain this in October. A black man in Spain, a black man in south of France. What does it mean to be a human being who just happens to be black in the world that we live in? That's where I would like us to start. Is what does it mean to be a human being?
Mm,
And then define that through the lens of what does it mean to be black in America or black in Spain. Then at any level, whether you're 30 or you're 50 or you're 70, you can come back and examine that through the lens of humanity and add more to it as you begin to age and mature.
mm, mm.
Yeah, I think that's the work. The work is for us to get back to our core humanity, which gives us permission to be all those things, but also that we don't have to be perfect to be loved. We
Mm.
can be all those things and still be loved. Still have a desire and also still have an expectation, a request for more.
Mm.
And that doesn't go away. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to me that the common theme throughout everything that you're saying is we have to go back and we have to do some research about ourselves.
Mhm.
We have to go in deep to learn ourselves, to understand who Black men are or who we are as Black people. Um, there's a lot of soul searching that we have to do in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It isn't sexy work. It's
No.
messy, and and you have to sit with things, and you got to do it in community.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to that. You need people around you so you can bounce things off,
Mhm.
right? And that soul searching is really deep because here's the thing: you may not get an answer immediately,
Mhm.
so we got to be willing to sit in it For example, my good friend Denise and I was going through something. I called her up. It was late. And I was like, Denise, and she was like, I need you to sit in that. And I don't want to. She said, I'm telling you, it's going to move if you sit in it. Just sit in it. She said, you're going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to kill you, David. Just sit. And I just sat in it about 7, 8 minutes. All of the things, all my feels, and they say it, all the feels,
Oh, like that.
and it moved. Right? It moved in a way that allowed me to say, "Hey, what's really going on here?" That going back to what I used to do or grabbing what used to work is no longer the formula anymore.
Mm.
And so it's being patient with ourselves. It's sitting with ourselves.
Mm.
It's being in community with people who's going to be patient with us, right? And give ourselves permission that we're going to make mistakes as we sojourn, but that's okay. That we're still in process, and that process is going to get us to wherever we need to reach in our humanity.
We're still in process.
We're still in process. Yeah, yeah. The work is not done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want to think about. You know how my grandmother was a baker. She baked well, right? My mother's mother baked well, but every now and then she used the same ingredients, but it didn't turn out the same. Right? They used the same ingredients, whether she was baking bread, but temperatures of the house and the temperature of what's going on outside. Sometimes things just don't turn out the way that we anticipate. And that is okay. It doesn't mean that the bread wasn't any good or
Right.
the cake wasn't digestible.
Yeah.
Right? We still ate it. We didn't know the difference. She knew, right? But we're kids. We're having a cake at grandma's house. But I noticed that about her. She was like, that didn't turn out right. But she used the same ingredients, the same stove, the same love. And that's what happens to us. Many times we expect perfection. And I just say, no, by daybreak or day end, it may get real messy. But the next day you get up and you process it all over again. You get back into life and try to do better. That's
Right.
all we're looking for is stay in the process.
Right. And then use these as learning lessons.
Absolutely. And that's where your truth really comes in, right? When you think about learning lessons, you're talking about learning meaning to be open, to be curious, to
Right.
ask certain questions, to be teachable, right?
Yes.
People want to be in love, but they may not be lovable,
Mm-hmm.
right? So life causes us to be a student. So we must have this level of curiosity, which allows us to imagine a world that we want to live in a different way. And we can imagine our lives in that world in a different way. If we can take the ceiling off our imaginations, right, and see ourselves in process, we can be so much further along in terms of black men and their humanity,
Yes.
and be in process with that. And the thing that I think that's oftentimes the one that I say is be gentle and give yourself grace.
Be gentle.
We're too hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And to just go lay down. I tell brother, just get some rest. It's sometimes we're on the edge because we're not resting,
Yeah.
right? And when you have not had rest and good nourishment
Yeah.
in a good environment, you make all kinds of mistakes.
Yes.
So the humanity allows us to go back to basics, and sometimes a good night's sleep with a fresh start in the morning changes everything.
Yeah. It's healing.
It's healing.
Healing, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. And good sheets.
Yes.
That's a whole other podcast.
You're right.
Brothers to step their sheet game up.
Yeah.
We want the sheets right, brothers. Call me if you need some suggestions. It'll
Right.
change your life.
Exactly. That was good. Something that I think is important for Black men to do is to identify and discover their beauty.
Mm.
Many are so far removed from that, and therefore continuing to pass on generations of negative perceptions onto the next, onto the next. And they're so entrenched in those voices, they can't even hear their own.
Mm.
Provide some thought on that.
Oh, that's powerful. Can you talk a little bit more about beauty for me, so I can get more clarity what you mean by beauty?
Who I am as a Black man, my
Mm.
beauty. Like, what is beautiful about me?
Mm. Oh wow, yeah. I think we do struggle with our self-image, if we're honest, right? And we cherry pick ourselves to death,
Mhm.
right? Well, I don't like my nose, or I like my shoulders, or and this kind of physical appearance. And I understand we want to look our best and feel our best,
Mhm.
but this beauty thing is so steeped in white supremacy. I got to say it. It's so steeped in the devaluing what is actually our makeup genetically, right? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't want to look good, but that beauty has to be anchored in something that is unmovable as well, because beauty fades,
Mhm.
right? So we got here's the messaging that hurts us in beauty: anti-aging. You can get the six pack, right?
Right.
You got to have the biggest penis. You got to have it's real, right?
Mhm.
Sizing up to
Yep.
that experience.
Yep.
That's based upon white supremacy and also black men being studs and all that
Right.
historical stuff, right? You got to at least be. You're not really a full man unless you're over 6 feet tall. So we got height issues. Well, I wish I was taller, but you're 5'5". Okay, roll with it. It is what it is, right? This is what it is, and you're still valuable. So we got all these messages that are coming through because those people are actually valued, right? We look at how we grow up and who gets the girl. Let's just break it all the way down. Who gets the girl, and those subtle messages has done damage on our self esteem and our sense of self in the mirror, right? So I say to brothers, first thing in the morning when you look in the mirror and you're doing your work, you need to say, I love you, because that may be the only I love you hear that day,
Mm.
right? And you got to say, and I like you. Yeah, you have a temperament, and yeah, you can be short at times, but I actually like you. That's beauty. That's nothing to do with nose. That has nothing to do with your height. That is just recognizing fully who you are in the mirror. And also, let me say this as well: it's a distraction to focus in on beauty, because you will always be chasing it, because it's fleeting,
Exactly.
right? So I will start there with men around beauty. Is let's take it out of the context of what we think it is and actually acknowledge what we actually have and love on it. And we can love on it and take care of it in ways that allows us to see the beauty in who we are, not just through aesthetics. The soul, the heart, the mind, the caring, the relationships we're in. Do you not know how beautiful it is for someone to depend on you and you come through?
Mm.
That's beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
right? To know that someone can call your name in a moment and you show up
Mm-hmm.
and you follow through
Mm-hmm.
and you actually care.
Yeah.
That's priceless. That is so much beauty in that,
Yeah.
right? That integrity, right? You man of my word, that's beauty.
Yes.
I bring my money home because that takes care of that, fortifies my home.
Right.
That's beauty, right?
Exactly.
Right. I have a friend of mine. Can I just say this about beauty?
Yes.
You know, I know a friend of mine. He cleans his wife's car every Sunday and gas it up.
That's beauty.
That's beauty. He's like, last thing my wife want to think about is going to the gas station.
Exactly.
He says too much going on, and I don't want her fumbling around out there. So he takes her car every Sunday, rain, sleet, or snow, cleans it up, fills that tank up because she has to go to work, right? Especially when she was driving into work. She's not doing that as much now, but that was routine for him.
Right.
That's beauty.
Yeah.
That's the beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Those
so.
little things. Yes.
Well, David, that is our time. But before we go, tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
Wow, thank you, thank you. Well, first of all, let me just say this has been amazing conversation.
Yes.
To have this conversation with you and all of your listeners. Thank you so much for providing a platform and providing a space for us as men to park our car, to show up in our vulnerabilities, and also maybe not knowing a lot, but we learn a lot in the process as well.
Yeah.
So I want my hats off to you and thank you for the work that you're doing. It's invaluable and it's so needed. So thank you. I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
You can find me on all the platforms. I'm not as consistent as I should be, but I'm out there. Okay. So my website is ispeaklifecoaching.com. That's ispeaklifecoaching.com is my website. And you can find all those same things on Instagram, Twitter, all of that is under the same name. If you can't find me under that name, look under David Shawn Smith. That's SHAWN, David Shawn Smith at ispeaklifecoaching.com. Send me an email or reach out to me, and I would love to be in conversation with all of you. And thank you, Ms. Williams and iChange, for this. Your work is priceless. And
Thank you.
thank you for providing space for our voices. It means a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to showcase you, your stories, for doing your part in changing the narrative, and lastly, for keeping your commitment, but being a part of the show. That means a lot. And as you said earlier, that is beauty. If you've enjoyed the show, please let us know. We would love to shout you out and post your comments. If you or someone you know is changing the narrative, please contact us at ichangethenarrative@gmail.com. We would love to share your story. For I Change the Narrative merchandise, visit ichangethenarrative.org. Thank you so much to our sponsors, So Organic, So Suave. You can follow Sauce on Instagram. And for the latest in product news and updates, visit sossd.co. We will not have a show next Saturday, as this is our last show for the year. We will see you in 2023, God willing. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you soon.